Jason Greenlee.
And your date of birth?
August 14th, 48.
1948.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll be 66 this year.
And what base did you jump out of?
Well, I rookied in Reading, and that was in '99, and then I went over to Missoula for 2000 and 2001.
All right. Where were you raised?
I'm an Army brat.
Okay.
So I was Turkey, Egypt, South Carolina, and then Washington, D.C.
And so, would you acquire appreciation of the outdoors?
Well, that's a good question. And I guess that's my first story, is that I thought I wanted to be an astronomer. And I was always interested in that. I had, when I was a kid, I had a paper route and I bought a telescope. And when I got into college, I discovered that I wasn't very good in chemistry and physics. So I was playing cards with some friends of mine, and I was moaning about my grades. And I said, I'll never make an astronomer. And one of my friends said, why don't you become a forester like me? I'm going to be a forester. And I said, well, what do they do? And he said, well, they ride around on horses and tip their hats to the ladies. That sounded pretty good to me. It wasn't until I was a forester that I figured out that the guy was talking about park rangers. So I went to forestry school, didn't know a pine from a fir, and I went to Berkeley. And,
Went to Berkeley Forestry School?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when there was a forestry school. So I graduated in '73, and we had quite a big class. I think there were about 100 students, and some of the first ladies in forestry. And I got out, but I had, while I was in college, Harry Biswell, Harry the Torch, was teaching there at Berkeley, and he took me out on some prescribed burns, and I got interested in that. So I got into fire.
Now, why did they call him Harry the Torch? I'm not familiar.
That was just his nickname. All his students called him Harry the Torch.
Was he a specialist in fire?
He was a specialist in fire. He'd come from the southeast, and he was very adamant about the role of fire in the ecosystem. And he came out to California when, at a time when fire was total anathema, and he got a lot of resistance from the Forest Service, Park Service, California Department of Forestry. No one wanted to listen to his story, and so it was pretty much a one-man accomplishment that Harry the Torch was able to introduce prescribed burning and get the Park Service interested in it. And of course they took off with it first, and he was a professor at Berkeley, so I had the good luck of being one of the students.
So that was your academic preparation. And so how long were you at Berkeley?
I was at Berkeley for 2 years, because the first 2 years you take your undergraduate English and everything, and I did that in the junior college, and I went to Berkeley for the last 2 years.
And then what did you do in the summers?
Let's see, I volunteered for the Forest Service in Immigrant Basin studying fire history. And then...
Was that in Montana?
No, it was Immigrant Basins in California in the Sierra Nevada.
Okay.
And so my girlfriend and I hiked around all summer with our dog and looked at fire scars and tried to put together a fire history. And the next summer I organized a crew of students, and we went up to Sequoia Kings Canyon in the high country there and looked at studied a lightning fire that had burned up there. The Park Service, it was one of the first fires that the Park Service allowed to burn. The South Sentinel fire in '72.
And you did this in '78?
No, we were doing this in '73.
Oh, okay.
Summer of '73, and I think we went back in '74 and continued that work. And I was in graduate school by that time.
So did you when did you begin working for the Forest Service or the Park Service? Who'd you work for?
It took me a while to get around to that, because while I was in grad school I started a consulting business doing prescribed burns. So I was probably the youngest forestry consultant ever. tried that.
Who would hire you? Who was hiring
It
you?
was difficult because, again, Harry was just, his influence was just beginning to be felt. They were doing, the Park Service was doing their first natural prescribed fires, and so there wasn't a lot of interest, and I had to drum it up. I had to go around. I got, what's the name of that? There's a big park system in the Bay Area. I forget their name, but they had parks that were overgrown, and they were interested. The campus at the University of California, where I went to grad school, Santa Cruz, hired me as a consultant, and so I kind of branched out from there. And I did that for about 10 years.
So from 72 till 82, roughly?
I graduated from Santa Cruz in '83.
Okay, so when did you decide to become a smoke jumper? When did that happen?
98.
Boy, by then you were ancient.
I got the record.
Is that right?
I'm the oldest rookie.
How old were you?
51.
Okay, had you any firefighting experience?
Yeah, because while I was consulting, I had to form a crew to do these prescribed burns, and so we bought a couple old engines and fixed them up and assembled a bunch of students from the Santa Cruz campus, and we approached the Forest Service in King City. We said, "Can you provide us with some training?" And they said, "Well, we'll not only provide you with training, but we'll give you what was called a blue card, and we'll send you out on fires." And that sounded pretty good. So we had a guy come up from King City and give us our first S-190, 130-190 course, and we all got carded. And then they brought a cache up for us, so we found a shed and we stuck a bunch of fire gear in there, and we started getting calls. And pretty soon it was big business. We were on the Marble Cone Fire of '77. We were there 90 days. On one crew of 20, I think I replaced 46 people during that 90 days, just from people dropping out. Or
So you had, was it like an IR crew? I mean, you had 21 people or thereabouts, or it was a big crew?
yeah, it was a Type 2 crew.
Yeah. And you were the crew boss.
Yeah, they said they went through 130, 190, and back then there were no task books, so we were carded, and then I became a squad leader, and then pretty quickly I was crew boss, and after that I was designating other people to be crew bosses. It was fairly informal in those days.
So how long were you doing that?
I did that until 82 and 83 were really slow years, and we couldn't hold a crew together. So we quit, and I went to work. I graduated, and I went to work for California State Parks as an ecologist.
Okay, so what was the process of...
Oh, back to jumping?
Yeah, I mean, you're moving through your life, and then suddenly you get this wild hair to be a smoke jumper? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, exactly. I went from consulting to working for state parks, and then we left California. I was married by then, and moved up to Washington State, to a little town called Roslyn, and I opened up a printing press. And that cup you have in your hand, the International Association of Wildland Fire, I founded that, and we started printing and producing a magazine called the International Journal of Wildland Fire, and it still exists. It's doing well. And we did that. We had a printing press in our back shed of this big farm that we bought, and pretty sophisticated, nice German equipment. We were producing a nice magazine, and but things were tough financially, and so I kept thinking, man, I gotta get a job. I gotta go out and earn some money. And my wife was thinking the same thing, because we were both putting all our money into this magazine. So she went to work at the local college, and somehow I met Arlen Craven, that was the base manager at Reading, in a bar. So So I must have been on fire or something like that. And I was probably 49 or 50 or something. I said, hey, how about if I become a smoke jumper? And he'd had a couple drinks by then. That's exactly what he said. And then he started thinking, well, wait a minute now, this guy's a writer. And maybe he'll write some good stuff about Smokejumper. Maybe this will be a feather in my cap as the base manager. So I'll give him a shot. He said, if you write stories about the jumpers and put them in your magazines, I have two, I'll give you a try, you know, if you make it through rookie training and everything. And so we had a deal. And I kept my end of the bargain. You will find my stories in Smokejumper magazine.
Okay.
But they're not exactly what Arlen had in mind.